So people can come up to the mic or submit their questions in the form of note cards. Maybe we have some questions already.
We have some already, too. But there's some right there.
Go ahead.
President Kim, thank you for your thoughtful analysis and informative presentation. My question is about the endowment pie chart that we saw in the beginning, and that there was 49% of that in illiquid assets. Is there a plan to change that distribution for, say, 2019? Thank you.
Q and Julie, you want to? I mean, let me. Q, why don't you come up and help us with that? But let me put it this way: the most important thing to remember is these guys have done a great job over the last 10 years. We're at the 95th percentile, right? And so remember that our team has performed outstandingly well. And with that, Q.
Well, I'll do my best. Endowments are perpetual. Churches and colleges last much longer than countries, and part of that is because they have illiquid investments. I mean, the best example of the endowment that Dartmouth has is a second college grant, which we value at $1. Now, we don't, nobody's going to sell it, and I don't know if we could in the current environment, but part of the reason why we are in the 95th percentile, and part of the endowment model that has worked incredibly well for endowments is because we can make investments that individuals can't make, that I wouldn't make, because we have a much longer time horizon than 25 or 30 years. So an investment that you might have made in 1990 or 1980 suddenly does something amazing in 1999, which is with the tech bubble. Or an investment that you might have been continually, incrementally investing in over a period of, say, 2 generations, suddenly is valued by the greater community at much, much higher than anybody else thought it would. So endowments have the ability to invest in investments that a lot of people don't even classify as investments at the time that they're made. And that's because endowments are perpetual. Does that answer your question?
You want to take this? Okay. So
These are coming in off the web.
yeah. One question is, which one should I take first, Carol? Should I take this one first?
Sure.
Yeah. So one question is, how can you justify the huge expense of home renovation at this time? Where is money coming from to install the indoor golf driving range? So first, if you just please look at my record, I have never taken a job because I want to live in a big house. When I took the job, I was asked a question, and the question was, will you live in the president's house or will you live off campus? And the answer that I gave was, well, I have to live in the president's house. That's part of my job. So the expense is much higher than I had thought. I'm very happy to report, though, that we have had private donors step up to cover the entire cost of the house renovation. And in other words, what happened was that donors to Dartmouth College have made a directed gift to cover the expense of the house. So, I came into a situation where there was a house that was built in 1926 in which the heating systems and the plumbing and the part of the electrical system hadn't been changed for 83 years. The basement flooded every time it rained, and I have 2 kids. So a flooded basement with old wiring is not a very safe environment for children. I can tell you that over 80% of the cost is in fixing the systems. We're making the house accessible, so now people in wheelchairs can get in. We've had to rip out the walls and replace the plumbing, and that's been the vast majority of the expense of the house. And in addition, so that the Dartmouth College budget itself does not take a hit, private donors, supporters of Dartmouth, have stepped up and covered the cost of the house. It makes me uncomfortable too. Most of my life has been spent trying to build houses for poor people in places like Haiti and Peru and elsewhere. But this is just part of the job. It's the primary place that we use for fundraising. It didn't happen this year, but many, many events happen at the President's house. And I see it as part of my duty to maintain the tradition of living in the President's house. I feel badly about it. I'm sorry about it. But we started the house long before we understood the details of this financial situation. And at this point, we're going to just finish it. Now, the indoor driving range, certainly not going to be in my house, I can tell you that for sure. But there have been people who have approached us to potentially build something in Leverone so that our golf teams can practice during the winter. Now, the only way that we'd go forward with this is if someone gave us a directed gift and said, I'm going to give you money to do this and nothing else, which happens all the time here at Dartmouth College. If someone were to come forward and say, we will give you a gift to do this, then it's not going to cost us anything. We will go ahead and do it. There are lots of things like that. But only if people come and say, we'll give you a gift for this and nothing else.
Oh, here's some.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kim, for your presentation, being so open and inclusive with the rest of the Dartmouth community and making these difficult decisions. My question is regarding something that you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, making the Dartmouth experience more open and available to a broader audience, decreasing this notion that it's this best-kept secret in academia. So I'm curious about given the uniqueness of the D plan, how we're open during the summer term, do you think that it would be financially prudent, possibly a way to raise funds even, to allow undergraduates from other institutions to attend and take classes here during the summer term?
That's a great question. People have been talking a lot about what we would want to do to increase the use of the campus in the summer. It's interesting, when Dartmouth started the D plan, we were very unusual to do that. We've had more calls from other institutions across the country right now talking about doing something like a D plan at their institutions, because that would allow them to basically stay open, and they could see it as a way of doing revenue, but also doing some of the unique features of the summer. We do have transfer students that come in the summer, and we do allow people from other places to take courses in the summer currently. One of the difficulties has been that our summer term does not line up very well, though, with most schools, especially any school that is a semester-based institution. We have been looking at ways to adjust our summer calendar, not with that goal, but if we do adjust the summer calendar so that we can end classes by the beginning of the Thanksgiving term, it will make our summer calendar line up more favorably. That could make that a possibility. But I think then we have to go back, and we'll be working with the faculty to see what would that actually mean, that we would bring in students from outside without diminishing the quality of the courses that we offer. What would be the full plan that could make that a possibility? But we're excited about some of the potential that could have for increasing enrollments and doing some interesting things for the summer. But it needs the calendar first, and then the rest of the project to come through.
Yeah, there was recently an article on the use of campuses. And is this on? Okay. The president, I think it was I'm not quite sure, but I think it was of George Washington University, was saying that unfortunately they only use their campus 50% of the time. With the 2-semester system, they use it 50% of the time. And they cited Dartmouth as one of the few schools who really make use of their campus all year round by requiring residency in the summer for at least one class of students. So, it's there have not been a lot of people who adopted the D plan. In fact, I don't think there are any groups that have adopted the D plan after Dartmouth did. But I think now everyone is looking at it to say, is this a much better way of utilizing facilities? So it's a great suggestion, but I think that many people are very happy that we have the D plan now, and so many are looking at it as a model for better use of facilities.
Again, President Kim, I want to thank you for having this panel open to the whole Dartmouth community. I know as a student, I find it to be very valuable to be able to have a transparent, open process that I feel like I can contribute to, so thank you for that. I guess my question was about your evidence-based approach, something you've talked about a lot in your research and also your leadership of the college. One of the things I just wanted to kind of speak to was the sense in which we can apply evidence-based approaches not only to new initiatives and new strategies for the college, but also to budget reduction and that kind of thing. I guess my question is, in what new ways have you applied this evidence-based approach, not only to the budget process, but also to the programs you do? The one way, like I was thinking, it'd be potentially applicable, for example, looking at the way we do residential life on campus. I know many upper-class students feel that their dorm room or whatever is really a mobile apartment that changes every term where they can put their stuff and sleep, but the sense of residential community and residential learning is often dead. I experienced the challenges of that working as a UGA on campus, and I guess there's just one example, I guess, of where potentially student focus groups looking at the way we do things could change things, make the student experience better for students at potentially less cost. It's just one example I've had personal experience with, and I just wanted to get your perspective on how evidence-based learning could be changed, how you've applied that in your presidency here. Thank you.
Well, Carol's got a lot more experience than I do on this, but let me just say that I hear very different kinds of responses to that. There are people who really don't like it moving so much. There are others who think that it makes them live lightly. They're used to moving. So I've just heard different things at different times. The way that I approach a problem, and people who I work very closely with every day are beginning to understand this, that when they come in, they say, here's what I think, here's what we should do. My question back is, well, what is the evidence that that's the best way to do it? Have other places done it better? Are there any studies? Do we know? And it's just the way I approach just about everything, right? And so, and I'm not saying that a randomized controlled study is needed for me to be convinced on things. Sometimes it's focus groups. Sometimes it's individual deep stories about the profundity of a particular insight. But we'll always try to use it, and we'll always try to be evidence-based. When we have to make decisions quickly and in a timely fashion, we can't always collect all the evidence, but we'll try. But Carol, you want to talk a little bit about?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question too, and it allows me to talk a little bit about process. And I think Sylvia Spears, the dean of the college, is in here as well. I mean, we're looking at everything. So certainly she and people in her group have already started saying, how about our residential life? How do we do things really well? What should we look at? We're also just looking at the cost. What does it cost when you close down in terms and people have to clean rooms and move things around? I mean, I think when Jim said no stone unturned, every single aspect of the functions that we do like that, people are looking to see what those costs are and see what the efficiencies are, and certainly then work with the students about ones that might affect them. But we also don't want to spend a great amount of time doing some things that may not be that important and may not have any real revenue savings. I think Jim has a great story where a faculty member said, just tell us what kind of scale we need to work on, or everyone's going to tell you to stop mowing the lawn in front of Wentworth or in front of Parkhurst. That the level of savings is also part of the issue. How much time do you want to spend looking into certain functions? So that's another thing we're thinking about right now, is where are large savings and where are ones that are going to maybe make life better or more efficient, but try to make some prioritization about the ones we take on first, where they're most likely to have a good, high-quality effect and give you the best savings. Those are the ones you want to do first, rather than a terrible effect and give you very little savings. We want to avoid those. So we're still a little bit in that kind of phase.
And just last night, one of the students said, if we're really going to put everything on the table, then we should have a shorter, we shouldn't build a bonfire as tall, and we should build smaller snow sculptures, right? And I said, shorter bonfire, what, $100? And it's just snow, right? So what we want to say is spend your time thinking about things with a sense of scale, right? We need to know what the sense of scale is. I mean, there are places that have sort of eliminated hot breakfasts, and I don't know whether the feeling of something bad happening to you was worth the savings that they realized, for example, right? I just don't know. So what we have to do is talk about everything and see the things that can really make a difference on the budget, and other things that are going to be such small impacts, but will feel so bad that we'll continue to do them.
I just realized Dean Spears is running another group in Collis at the time,
So
which is why she can't speak about it. I'm sure she's over there going, oh, I could have plenty to say. But your idea might be one of those ones that has a great positive impact, and so it's worth thinking about.
We've looked at that.
Yeah.
We're going to look at that.
Yeah.
I mean, we really are. I mean, there some of this is almost like systems engineering, figuring out how to get people moving in and out of dorms in the right way. And so we haven't told Dean Helbley yet, but we're going to ask Dean Helbley to help us to think about things like student movement in a more evidence-based way. Yeah. Yes.
one thing I haven't seen on your charts as a possible source of revenue is real estate operations. And I wonder about that. I think we all know that Dartmouth is a significant owner of real estate in and around Hanover, and we also have the second grant lands. And so I guess the question that I have in my mind is, are they a revenue producer now, and what could we do to make them more of one in the future?
Steve, you want to take it?
Excuse me, thank you. That's an excellent question. Right now, real estate, and I'm thinking that you're thinking about the private real estate that we have right now, is actually bringing a return, one, and it's bringing a return to the endowment. Two, we are looking at putting together an approach to strategically look at all of the properties. Which of the properties that are possible to sell, which of the properties that we want to hold on to, and if there are other properties that we might want to do some further investment in. It's every institution or entity that is a large holder of property has to be doing that, and will be doing that too. That is going to be part of what our overall approach will be. Could I add one thing to the question about the endowment in terms of the moving to having a greater share of the public equities? I think is what the question amounted to. Our target allocation is 40% for public equities. Earlier this year, the actual portfolio for public equities was as low as 23 or 24%. President Kim presented the portfolio as of the beginning of September at 27%. It's the intention to try to get back to 40%, but to do it in a way that is as smart as possible so that we're not selling at a loss, but figuring out what's the way to do that. And the team is really focused very, very intensely on that, on each individual potential buy and sell, to try to position the portfolio back to our target of a 40% allocation for the public equities.
I'll take a question from Collis, and the question is, what exactly is the Dartmouth experience? Please be specific. So it's a great example again of our very precise and demanding students, I hope. But I would put it this way. I'm new to this place, and I have been learning from all of you what the Dartmouth experience is. And if I were to begin my own list, it would start as I've started. I started in the summer. I think the sophomore summer is an incredibly wonderful part of the Dartmouth experience. Then I had the fantastic opportunity to go up to to Mount Moosilauke, the Ravine Lodge, and see how gloriously new students are welcomed to Dartmouth. I have been to homecoming. I've been to the classes. I've taught several classes now myself, and the classroom experience, I think, is really, really critical. So there are lots of different pieces of the Dartmouth experience. But the other thing I'll say is the Dartmouth experience changes over time. I've also spent a lot of time with alums from the classes in the 1950s, and the Dartmouth experience was different back then. I think there are core pieces of it that are still the same. The intensive interaction with outstanding faculty in small classroom settings, this unbelievable setting, the kind of relationships that build between students. These are all parts of the Dartmouth experience. The point is, the reason we raise it is because this is the conversation we need to have together. All of this, people are going to have different views of what's critical to the Dartmouth experience. Let's have that discussion from now going forward. And it might even be interesting for those of you who've been here a long time to hear the many, many voices of what's really critical about the Dartmouth experience. I've got my own impressions, but I'm not coming in with some preconceived notion of what it is and what it has to be and what we have to cut. I'm not. I want to have that discussion with everybody. Carol?
Well, I just think that we talk about the Dartmouth experience in a lot of ways. The question I have here, I think, is something that relates very directly to it. And somebody wrote this one in, and they said, is it true that faculty are not exempt from layoffs this time? So we go pretty core to the Dartmouth experience when we start talking about the size and the quality of the faculty. And so when I see that question, and Jim has said, you know, you're looking at everything. Well, of course, we are looking at everything, but does that mean that we're thinking about becoming a smaller faculty of tenure-track faculty or changing? And I think the answer to that is no. We spent the last 15 years getting to the size faculty that we are right now and working to get the quality of the faculty that we are. But we have, and in spite of that, we did not fill positions so that we're 5% unfilled positions in the faculty right now. So we are slowing the replacement of faculty, but we don't want to diminish the quality of the academic experience because that is very much at the central part of how we look at the Dartmouth experience. We also, though, turned to the faculty and said, and we've been having meetings, this is when we have meetings with every department and program chair, and we try to figure out what courses are being taught next year. And we've said to every single one of them, what if we need to reduce the number of courses that you're teaching next year? How would you make those decisions? What would be the basis for the decisions that were most likely to preserve the integrity of your academic program? Can you choose courses to offer that could go to an every other year offering? Could you choose to consolidate some courses? Could you make sure that every single department is able to ensure that it has its full major requirements met? You know, so we make lots of very careful, I'd put those in the evidence-based decision-making process with each department and program each year, and even more so this year when we're thinking about ways to reduce revenue. But that too means that individual people will not be asked to teach courses that they may have been teaching before. So again, that doesn't come without having an effect in a very real way on an individual. So we're thinking about all those things, but we put that pretty core to the Dartmouth experience.
Let me add to that, you know, I know that with the budget cuts and the layoffs, that many people are just working much, much harder. And I just want to say how grateful I am to staff for having stepped up in difficult times and doing such hard work. Let me also, though, say that everywhere I've gone with the Board of Trustees, with all of the alumni, the integrity, the quality, the size even of the faculty is a non-negotiable. They have made it absolutely clear to me. And you know, I've been a faculty member for most of my adult life. So if you look at the core functions of a college or university like Dartmouth, it's teaching, it's creating, discovering, producing new knowledge, and it's actually taking that knowledge and having an impact in the world. Faculty are essential to all three of those functions. So you know, we have to be strategic. You know, far from thinking about cutting faculty, my biggest concern is to retain the faculty so that they're not poached by others who may have, you know, found pots of money that will allow them to go after our faculty who, as I said again, have this unique you know, dual skill of doing both research and teaching. So it's one of the issues that has been made clear to me by the board, but also that I think is right for Dartmouth, that we have to protect our faculty.
The faculty committees are also working on this quite a bit, and trust me, they're asking these very questions themselves and also saying how within the things that we do, can we do them differently that will also preserve some finances for the rest of the institution. That's a big part of how they also look at it, is that they consider themselves part of a community that works with the people, everybody on the campus to preserve or to create the Dartmouth academic learning experience. So this is still very central to our conversations, is how will we deal with the academic programs in their full variety of costs and needs in such a way that allows us to preserve their quality, but also allows us to save some money.
Jim, I think I'm going to answer. I'm not sure if this question was from the web or call us and then allow you enough time to close before 1:30. And I'm actually going to try to combine a couple of questions because these are questions that people have asked. Is Dartmouth considering furloughs? Some other colleges and universities have used furloughs to assist with budgetary challenges. There are many comments on the web, actually, about a furlough kind of a concept. And also there are a question about many people are asking about layoffs, what the timing, what the number is, and so forth. So I'll just spend just a few seconds on that, and then we do have to close off at 1:30. So we're going to take an approach that will first look at things that don't have to do with people first. So when Jim put up on where we're going to look, things that had to do with non-compensation and other kinds of restructuring, we're going to take a look at that first and take a look at that very, very seriously. Savings around capital, other kinds of revenue generation. We'll do those things first. It's the right thing to do. As far as people, we will do things first that implement a very hard freeze on positions. We're looking at things like another early retirement incentive, potentially other kinds of buyouts. Many people have suggested, are there ways to do part-time or other kinds of, I won't call it a job sharing, but ways where work can get done, but get done with fewer hours, meaning that people are actually getting paid less. We have to look at a concept of a furlough. There were probably a dozen different comments on the web about people looking at how to use the summer, how to use the winter break as ways to actually reduce staff time. We're going to need to look at all of those things. After we do those things, we believe, given the size of the gap, that there still will be layoffs. And the timing for those layoffs, I know that people are asking or looking for a hard date, and I wish that I could actually convey a hard date. It certainly won't be before Christmas. It'll be something that will probably happen over time, but we do want to make sure that we attack the personnel issue and the cost issue first by looking at those items that do not have to do with compensation first, and then in a series of ways of looking at ways where people can potentially choose other options. So I know people want to know a date when, and we will provide a date when, but it would just feel too early in the process now to do that.
Let me close with just a few thoughts and words. You know, today is December 1st, and in all the rest of the world, and also here in Hanover, it's World AIDS Day. 6 years ago, in 2003, I was in Nairobi, Kenya. And in 2003, despite the fact that there were 30 million people in Africa living with HIV, less than 50,000 were on treatment. And close to 3 million people were dying every year of what is now in the United States an entirely treatable disease. People are living for 20, 30 years on treatment for HIV. And on this day, 6 years ago, we launched the 3x5 initiative. We were told that we were absolutely crazy, that treatment for HIV in Africa was impossible. Africans don't have a sense of time. All these things were said to us. Today, 4.5 million people are on treatment. It's not enough, but it's a figure that was unthinkable in 2003. On almost every December 1st for more than a decade, I've been spending my time trying to think about things like how to improve access to care for HIV. But I'm here today because I still believe more than ever before that this is the right place for me to be, and this is the right place for all of us to be. That if we get it right, over the next 2 years, if we make the tough decisions, if we have the difficult conversations, if we do what we really need to do for the next 2 years, the knowledge we'll create, the students who will come out of here, are going to launch their 3x5. And they're going to do it in the most spectacular way that one can imagine. So I'm very sorry that we have to have this discussion. It's not the one that I intended to have with you on December 1st of 2009, my first year as president, but it's one that we just simply have to have. We're going to be as disciplined as we can be. We're going to be as principled as we've ever been in terms of treating everybody with respect and humanity. But we've got to face the gap that's staring at us. And I think when we do, we're going to get to the vision for the 250th anniversary much, much more quickly. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for listening to us talk about a not so happy subject. And I really, really look forward to working with all of you to get this problem solved and to move on to the next great thing. Thank you.